Matthew writes, he's quite adventurous as both a traveler, a writer, and just in general, with life in general. I'm so glad he's here tonight. Join me in a warm welcome for Matthew Félix.
When the time came to decide what to study in college, my first choice was creative writing. My parents, however, who happened to be paying most of the bills at the time, encouraged me to study something else with which I might actually be able to get a job. The first time I gave a publisher an excerpt from the draft of my novel, I was shaking like a leaf. After I hit send, I was a wreck. It was one of the hardest things, one of the scariest things I've ever done. When I quit my job, the first of what would prove to be many times, and I ran off, yes, and I gave up my apartment in San Francisco, and I ran off to an Andalusian village in the mountains, isolated Andalusian village with, I didn't know anyone, no phone, no radio, no TV, no internet. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. Each of those milestones on my literary journey represents or asked of me to have courage. They required courage because writing, being a writer, entails us stepping into the unknown. And stepping into the unknown, again, takes courage. The unknowns we face as writers take many forms. I didn't have the courage to pursue my passion for writing in college, but when I mustered that courage as an adult, I found myself face to face with a lot of very daunting unknowns, most of which stemmed from my own self-doubt. Could I really write? Did I have a compelling story to tell? Would anyone care? Was I just setting myself up for failure to even try? And that was just the beginning. Years later, when I was overcome with that anxiety as I hit send and sent in the sample of the draft of my novel, it was because I felt totally exposed. I was no longer grappling with the unknown in private. Now I was doing it in public for the whole world to see. And what made it even worse was that at the same time, I was setting myself up for judgment. No one talks about writers in neutral terms. No one says, Linda is a really adequate writer. They say, she's a good writer, she's a great writer. We say, I loved that book, or I hated that book. And whereas in my day-to-day life, I don't really need too much external validation, as a writer, I kind of do. I don't expect everyone to like my writing, but I actually do want some people to like my writing. Ideally, say maybe 3 million would be And especially if I'm crazy enough to hope to make a living at writing, then again, it actually matters what other people think. And for me, submitting my case to the court of public opinion, both in the sense of not only hoping that people would like my work, but they would also actually pay for it, entailed yet another scary descent into the unknown. It required a lot of courage, as I'm sure everyone in this room can relate to. So, if writing takes so much courage and a spirit of adventure, then why do we do it? Some of the answers are obvious, but I think a way to just sort of sum it up is because wherever that adventure leads us, the rewards are great. The ways in which my own writing endeavors have enriched my life are innumerable and profound. Because when we have the courage to pursue our passions, inevitably we find ourselves challenged and we can't help but to grow. Creatively, intellectually, spiritually, in innumerable, countless ways. Even better, that it's not just about us. If we're lucky enough to find an audience, no matter how big or how small, we're going to have an impact on them as well. And often in ways that we don't even intend, could never anticipate, and may not even ever know. And whether we inspire, whether we provoke thought, whether we make them laugh, it's incredibly rewarding. The same is true for ourselves. When we surrender to the adventure, we're affected in ways we never could have expected. It's exciting. It makes us feel more alive. It reminds us that life itself is an adventure, and it allows us to more fully throw ourselves into it. I never expected to live in an Andalusian village. I never expected my stay there to lead to the realization of my dream of living in Paris. I never expected my novel to lead to a book I never intended to write about my misadventures in Morocco, to lead to my upcoming book about my bizarre experiences in toilets, in showers, and in bathtubs throughout the Mediterranean, from Spain to the West Bank to Egypt. And I never expected to go from grimacing painfully every time I tried to tell someone that I was a writer, because I wasn't quite yet convinced that I actually was, to talking to a group of writers about being a writer on the beginning of 2018. We all have our own examples of where having the courage to embark upon our literary adventures has unexpectedly led. And those are just a few of mine. The story